Are you guys there?
Oh,
We
yeah.
are
Sorry.
here.
I didn't see
Oh,
you.
you're fine. Yeah, I just popped in silently.
Okay. Everyone, I want to welcome today's guest on the Not Too Popular podcast. She's an entrepreneur, former fitness coach, my BFF, and soon to be bride. Ladies and gentlemen, Celia Cavalli.
Oh my
Celia,
gosh.
welcome. Thank you so much for joining.
So happy to have you.
Thank you so much. I'm excited to be here.
Yay. So, on your YouTube channel, you have a video called My Explant Surgery, Breast Implant Illness. When did you first get your implants and how long did you have them for?
I had my implants done. Well, I think first I should say why I got them done, if you don't mind me kind of talking a
Yeah,
little bit about that.
absolutely.
Um, so back in those days, I was doing a ton of promotional modeling. I was working in the bar industry, and it was kind of just a thing where, that was like the next step. Like at the time, I was working like three jobs. It was crazy. I was working at MAC Cosmetics. I worked at a nightclub in Minneapolis, which got shut down later. We won't talk about that. But I also worked for GNC and I did a lot of fitness stuff. And on top of that, I was doing promotional modeling for different companies around the area. I was with a couple agencies in the Minneapolis area. And it was just highly encouraged. Like, I think a lot of the girls back then were, just so like, oh, you don't have them yet? Like, why don't you have them yet? And so for me, it was kind of like this rite of passage into expanding my career, which I don't regret it because I learned a lot, but I do regret the aftermath of what happened after I got them. But I got them done in 2012, I believe it was, and I had them for 6 years before I started having major issues.
Okay. So did you get them done in Minneapolis?
I did. I won't name the doctor I got them done by just for his own personal, like, I just don't want to go
Protection.
there. Yeah,
Yeah.
but on the day of my surgery, he did outpatient. So I mean, not outpatient, but he did it at a hospital that was not his clinic. So it was inside of a hospital in, I think it was up north somewhere. I forget the suburban names up there, but it was in one of those places. And it was a huge hospital. I was going in for surgery and I was signing the paperwork, and I noticed on the paperwork it said saline implants. And girl, when you're spending an extra like $3,000 for that silicone, you're like, excuse me, like, what is this? And so I like confronted him about it, and he was like, oh my gosh, like my assistant never told me that we switched, and she never put it into, and I'm like, well, I paid an extra 3 grand for silicone, so damn it, I want my silicone, right? So he like goes on this wicked goose chase around the hospital trying to find implants that were the correct size. And I guess he found ones that were way smaller than I wanted, but he just put them in anyways. I think he was just kind of over it at that point. And so I got what I didn't want to begin with, but it actually turned out to be a benefit later. Like, I'm such a huge believer in things always turn out how they should. Because the small size saved the integrity of my boobs when I got them taken out. Like, not to be like TMI, but I love my boobs without implants in them. And I don't think I would have if I had a bigger implant, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So did you just kind of get them as like a business decision? And did you feel like peer pressured a little bit because of some other like coworkers and stuff that you were working with?
Most definitely, 100%. And actually, in the fitness industry, this is very near and dear to my heart because as you guys know, well, people who may have known me from social media or whatever who are listening to this, I started getting back into training for a fitness competition. And when I was doing those, all the girls had them. Like, it was just a thing. And now when I look at athletes, I always look for athletes who do not have them and who are still winning, because I think it's so important to prove and to send that message that you don't need to have implants to be successful in any industry. And I think that at the time, as soon as I got them done, I'm not going to lie, I made a lot more money, and I got a lot more opportunities, and the opportunities were better. They paid better. And so I think it's kind of this thing where, it's not said to you like, hey, you need to have it done, but it is suggested throughout the industry. When you're modeling, when you're doing any sort of thing, it's one of those things where, unless you're a fashion model who it's cool to be flat chested and 6 feet tall, I am like 5'2". I'm a little shorty. And so for me, there was no chance, unless I put stilts in my legs, that I would ever do anything on a runway. And so for me, it was really a sex appeal thing, I think. And, you know, I kind of have that look where I was stereotyped like that in the industry anyways. And so it was very much like, oh, you don't have breast implants yet. Why? Like, it was just like one of those common sense things in the industry. Like, oh, when you get them, you're going to start booking more events and doing more things. And so to me, it was just like the next step, you know, it was just like that kind of, like I said, it was kind of like a rite of passage. And, you know, I didn't hate them, but I didn't love them. Like after getting them done, I was like, ooh, I kind of feel like I made a mistake.
Yeah. So did you notice like any red flags like during any of your consultations with the doctors, or like, is there anything that kind of, looking back now, you would be like, oh, that's like, this is just going to be a bad idea?
I won't say too much like what happened within the consult, because I honestly don't remember. I remember it was very short. Like it was like, oh, you want breast implants? Great. Like we can do that for you right here, right now. Just kidding. But they were like very much like very pushy about it. Didn't even tell me that I had the right to go see like other doctors for second, third opinions. It was just kind of like, let's get you scheduled. And so I felt kind of pressured into it. By the doctor that I saw. It was the first doctor who I went to, who was actually very expensive. There was another doctor who did them for like $5,000, who everyone went to, but he was like the first person who I went to, and I was going to go around and get opinions, but it was kind of like, let's just get you scheduled. Like, this is going to be the best decision of your life. And it was really hyped up, and the hype just wasn't real. And actually, after getting them done, I was getting ready to go to work that night. And I remember I was like doing my hair, and all of a sudden I had this rash. It was very weird. It was very itchy, very red, and it broke out all over my arms. And I was like, this is the first time I've had a rash ever in my life. Like I've gotten acne, but I've never had like a rash. Like my sister used to get rashes all the time. I was not that kid. I was like the acne girl, but like rashes, not my thing. So I was like, what the hell is this? Like, I've never had an issue at all ever with like my arms. I've never had this. And that was the first sign of the lupus that I ended up getting later with the breast implants.
So you talked a little bit about the symptoms, but what are some of the other symptoms you started experiencing? I know in some of your videos, you mentioned things like extreme fatigue, hair loss, dizziness. Talk about your symptoms and when you first started noticing them.
Oh my gosh. Okay. So now that I like look back on the timeline of it, and this is really interesting, and I'm really glad we get to talk about this because maybe someone else is going through this. But after getting my implants done and I had the rashes and all of that, I was experiencing some dizziness and some panic attack symptoms. But I figured, hey, you know, I went off my birth control. I'll just go back on it. And I actually had a doctor's appointment yesterday, and we were talking about the birth control and how it suppressed all my symptoms for so long. Mm-hmm. So the interesting thing is that I probably had severe damage going on all those years that I just wasn't super aware of because I had the hormones that were suppressing all the symptoms. And so the first time I experienced a panic attack actually was in Las Vegas. I'd moved there in 2012 or 13, I believe. And I was at Target, and I was like walking through Target, and all of a sudden I was just hit with like a whoosh feeling. I don't know if you've ever experienced that, but it's like this, like you're getting the wind knocked out of you, and the lights seem too bright. And then the hall, or not the halls, but the walls felt like they were like caving in on me. And I literally had a shopping cart full of stuff that was non-perishable. Thank you, Target. But it was non-perishable. It was like random stuff, you know, like nail polish and like just random stuff. Anyway, so I was walking through Target, and I just like left. I like dipped. I just dropped the cart where it was, and I just walked right out. And I was like, what the hell was that? I've never experienced that in my entire life. And went back on birth control. I was on Depo-Provera. Went back on Depo once I found my doctor in Las Vegas, which was shortly after that. And didn't have any symptoms. I'd have like weird stuff like bloating, like stomach bloating, where I would just get super bloated. I did have a lot of moon face, which is where your face just gets really puffy and swollen. And I was just thought, oh, I have a double chin. Like I wasn't, and Mel knows because she like knew me back when I had my implants. I was like, a little bit thicker, but I was still thin, which was weird. Like my face was
Mhm.
always like kind of thick, but my like body was always a little bit more thin. But I did carry weight around my midsection and my
Mhm.
chin area. And finding out now that that is really a sign of like, you know, water retention, inflammation. I was just highly inflamed and I didn't really experience fully what was going on until I went off of birth control in 2017. And by 2018, it was like full blown panic attacks every day, dizziness every day, like vertigo, where it was so bad that the walls felt like they were just like spinning. Like I felt like I was on LSD, and I've never done drugs. Like I tried an edible in Vegas one time. It was legal. I bought it from one of those legal shops and it was weird as hell. Like I'll just say that. But like I've never done drugs. And so this to me was like being on drugs 24/7 without wanting to be. And it was horrifying. And my fiance would just laugh at me and be like, people pay for that. And I'm like, yeah, well, I'm about to pay to not be feeling like this because it's awful. And so I ended up doing the explant in 2019. And that was really when people started looking at my YouTube and like, oh, what is this all about? Because I was talking about, you know, why I'm getting my boobs taken out, and then talking about the recovery as well.
Yeah, that's like really, I didn't know because I didn't know that this was all happening. So were you experiencing these symptoms when I came to visit you in Vegas? I'm not even sure,
No,
like
mm-mm,
none. Okay.
none. Like I felt completely fine. I will say I had like extreme irritability, and I don't know if Mel remembers that, but like I would just,
Well,
I would just get snappy. Like I was very like, I used to call it just being stubborn, but I was just really like, I don't know, like I just was a different person. Like when I got my implants taken out, a lot of my close friends and family started noticing how different I was. They were like, you're just more understanding, more mellow, like you're not so like uptight about things. Like I was just like a kinder person when I got them out. Like when I had them in, I think it was just all that like, you know, inflammation building up in my
Mhm.
body. I think it was like kind of like when you shake a Diet Coke, it's like it's about to explode. But like, you know, and then you drop a Skittle in there and it's like, or whatever it is that people drop in those things, and it just like literally combusts. That was like me every single day. And really, the tipping point was really going off birth control. It was just like, that's when everything just kind of hit the fan, you know?
so the birth control, was that kind of how you noticed that something was wrong or you were on the birth control?
So when I got off of birth control, I noticed that I felt really crazy when I was off birth control. Like I tried going off of it multiple times to no avail. Like I kept going back on, because every time I went off, I felt like my hormones were just so messed up. And I would talk to doctors and they're like, oh, it's safe to be on Depo for 20 years. You know, people do it all the time. And I'm like, really? Like, really? But you know, I didn't want to feel that way. And then finally I'm like, you know, in 2017, I'm like, this is it. I'm going off of this. Like I've been on this for so many years. I don't think it's healthy. I had a girlfriend of mine who was like, Celia, are you kidding me? Like you've been on it for so long. Like you need to get off that shit. And she told me to my face, she was like, don't be stupid. Like this is gonna ruin your body. And so I went off of it and I made this commitment like, hey, no matter what, you're not going to go back on it. You're going to deal with whatever's coming up. And, you know, it's been a challenge. It's been 3 years, almost 3 years of extreme pain and anxiety and all these crazy symptoms. But I will say it's getting better and better. But one thing that was really weird was the eye floaters. I don't know if you've ever experienced eye floaters.
No, what's
Oh my
that?
God. So it's like having worms in your eyes. Like you see these
Oh,
black things that are flying around your eyes. Like you can't look into the sky and you can't be surrounded by light because all you see is these like floaty things going through your eye. And it's so scary. And there was a point where mine were so bad that I was experiencing like extreme vision loss, like where it was just like all I could see was these floaty things. And so I didn't even want to keep my eyes open because it was horrifying. Like I was like, is this worms? Like I was on Google, you know, like trying to PubMD and like,
oh God.
you know, I was just scaring the crap out of myself. But, you know, it is horrifying when you're going through that. And I got into a breast implant illness group with over 40,000 women. I'm sure it's grown since then. It was kind of like this whole grassroots thing when I first heard about this. It was like not many people knew about it. And I got into this group. I think Crystal Hefner had just gotten hers out. And so it started to gain some traction. Like some celebrities were talking about it. It was starting to gain traction. And they were talking about the eye floaters. And I'm like, hell no, what the hell? Like, do you guys have this too? Like, I'm not just this like weirdo. And, you know, I think that's why I'm so passionate about talking about my issues publicly. Like, a lot of people say I overshare on social media, but I'm like, that could save someone's life. Because at the time, I thought that I was going clinically psychotic, and I was like, I'm just going to kill myself. Like, I was so unbearable that I'm like, I can't live like this. Like, I'm going to have to think of some way to get rid of myself because I can't deal with this. And it was almost like this reassurance when you know that other people are going through it too, and it's not you. It's like something that you can work on and get through. It just helps so much. And that vulnerability was something that I promised I would talk, you know, something I would use at that point going forward to help other people, because I remember how reassuring it felt when I heard that other women were going through what I was. It was like this blanket of comfort, and I just kind of stuck with that, you know, that feeling. And that's really what got me through the entire experience.
Yeah, I mean, I can only imagine, like, it just would be so scary to have all these symptoms and have no clue what it was. But because you had some friends who were telling you that it might be from the breast implants, right?
So there was actually this girl I worked with at the time, and she was like, hey, do you think it's your like, okay, so I posted a photo of me in a sports bra, and obviously you can tell like I had implants, you know, they're very round
Yeah.
and, you know, they're implanty. And so like she was like,
Implanty.
they're very implanty. And so she was like, hey, you know, I know you have breast implants. They're probably what's making you sick, because she knew that I was sick at that point. Like, the people who were close to me knew what I was going through. It was very like traumatizing. And she's like, I think it's your breast implants. And I'm like, really? And I was like, I don't know. Like, I'm having weird symptoms. Like, I had rib pain, like really sharp rib pain, which was very odd, but it was like the lower ribs. And then I also had like really bad periods, like to the point where it was like bleeding out. Like, I felt like it was just like doom and gloom for like a week and a half, where it was like literally Tampax, come sponsor me. Like, that's how bad it was. I was like literally going through like packs of like pads, and it was bad that I was wearing super tampon and super pads, and I still was having breakthrough bleeding, and I'd have to wake up in the middle of the night. And so I started looking up YouTubes, and there was a couple stories of girls who were having breast implant illness, but their symptoms were so like, they had capsular contracture or whatever it's called, where it's like it like the boobs deform themselves from like the implant. I didn't have any of that. Like, my boobs looked perfect with the implants in, so I didn't think anything was wrong, because I'm like, well, you know, they don't look weird. There's nothing that's really like going on. But then there was some stuff that really started tipping me off. Was I had a very strong chemical smell coming from my armpits and my urine, and it almost smelled sweet. Like, my urine smelled kind of like candy. I know this sounds really weird, but it was a very strong, sweet aroma mixed with bleach. And it kind of was like, what the hell is this? And even Mark was like, that's very weird. And no one really had any answers. And so I'm like, well, maybe I will join the breast implant illness community and just see what is going on in here. And almost all the women were having the same exact symptoms I was. You know, the smell of bleach coming out of their armpits, and, you know, just very high chemical scent coming out of like their mouth. Like, every morning I'd wake up to the taste of like iron. Like, it tasted like I had blood in my mouth for like the entire night. And it was like this like weird metallic taste. And, you know, Mark was like, maybe you're just biting yourself in your sleep. So I was wearing mouth guards every night, and I still had the taste. And it was a really weird thing, but I realized that that's just the chemicals trying to like get out of the body, I guess, or something. Because once I got the implants out, that was completely gone.
Yeah, because you also said that you were experiencing like fever and chills, and which is, I mean, I've had that where, you know, if your body's trying to fight off something that it thinks is like, you know, toxic in your body, you're going to have the fever and chills. So there was a lot of, you know, signs and symptoms, but of course, like, if your boobs look fine, how would you really, there's nothing on the surface that's telling you, it's like all internal. So how would you really know?
Well, there was a girl, her name's Ty the Infamous, I think. She's on YouTube. And at the time that was going on, I was experiencing like complete like legs going out and seizure effects. And so that was when it started getting really scary. And she was having similar, loss of control, like dropping things all the time, the tremors. And she was having that too. And she actually recorded a video where she was actually going through one of the episodes. And I'm like, wow, that looks like me. Like, it was like this whole moment where I just realized, I'm like, okay, she's getting her implants out. And she got hers out right before I did, I believe. I think she did, or maybe she did it after. I'm not sure. But I just remember seeing her videos leading up to her getting them out. And I remember thinking, okay, like, this is a real thing. Like, these women are suffering from chemical exposure because, the implants sit on top of your organs. They sit on top of your heart. They're in your chest. And so they're melting in your body. I remember going to my surgeon and she had an implant on the table. I have a picture with it. And she had an implant on the table and it was literally sweating beads of silicone. And I'm like, can you imagine that being in your body? For our bodies are amazing. Yeah. Like, the fact that my body dealt with sweaty implants for 6 years and is still alive. Like, I'm like, how did I not just drop dead in a shopping mall somewhere? You know what I mean? Like, how was I not? And trust me, I felt that way so many times where I was at the airport once and I was like, I am going to have a full blown panic attack. Like, it was awful. I was walking and I felt like my legs were going out. My vision was starting to fade. I felt like I was going in and out of like consciousness and it was scary. But like, our bodies are so incredible. The fact that they can keep us alive despite the stupid stuff we do. And it was at that moment that I realized, these have been sweating inside my body for 6 years. And so I started actually Googling liquid silicone toxicity. And when I started to Google that, I started realizing all this stuff was coming up where it's illegal to inject liquid silicone into a person because it will kill them.
Really?
And I was like, wait a second, then what's an implant made of silicone, right? So I looked that up and it's liquid silicone inside of a capsule. It says that the only reason why it's legal is because there's a capsule covering the liquid silicone. And I'm like, you've got to be shitting me. Like, the fact that liquid silicone, free-flowing liquid silicone is illegal to inject inside of a human body, but it's legal if there's something that's kind of containing it, but not really. Like, that's legal, but the other one's illegal. So it's a slow death with a silicone implant. And I'm like, that is so messed up that that's even legal, like, it just really boggled my brain. And I did the research on the ingredients in there. I actually contacted Allergan, which is the company that manufactured mine. And they sent over a complete, everything about the implants. They were really good about it. I'm going to give them that. But they sent over all the like studies on it. And it said that a lot of women go through brain damage and trauma and stuff like that and suicide and because of implants. So there is a side effect part that they never tell you about that's actually in the insert that talks about the brain damage and side effects and systemic lupus and other things that can happen when you have implants. But of course they tell you, they're 100% safe and they've been tested on the market.
Oh, wow. So are they the silicone? Is that still legal? Because I thought, wasn't there like a thing where they took that away or like it's not legal anymore because of all this?
So that's a really great question because I think a lot of people who aren't like in the community like would look at that and be like, oh, they took them off the market. They only took off the textured silicone implants. So they only took off one type of implant because it was causing cancer. And so that being said, like the smooth implants, like what I had was not textured, it was smooth. Those are still on the market and those are still being sold every single day.
Okay. Wait, so what are the implants that like if you're going to, if you really want to get this done, because it's silicone and then you said saline or like the two options?
So there's like different types of silicone. You can get gummy bear silicone, regular silicone. Like it's kind of like a buffet of silicone. And then there's like, the saline is salt water. And those are sold as the most safe option on the market because it is salt water. And they say that if they rupture, it just goes into your body. But what they don't tell you is that that is sitting in your body at a high temperature for however many years, and that it can harbor black mold, which is very toxic to the human body. So there's a lot of cases of like implants having a lot of mold in them. Lots of things that can go wrong with a saline implant. And so like no implant is safe, especially because the saline implants have a silicone shell.
Right. So would it be, I mean, I guess like out of the two though, would it be safer, usually using that word safer to get the saline though, as opposed to the
It's
silicone?
really hard to
Just,
say. Like, I mean, honestly, I don't know, but I think that honestly, like from talking to all the women I've talked to, I think a lot of women thought that the saline was safer, and so they went with that route, and they were sicker than I was. And so, it just kind of depends on the person's body. Like, if you're more, if I had gotten saline, maybe I wouldn't have gotten as sick, but maybe I would have. It's just hard to say because with the mold aspect, the silicone doesn't really harbor mold the same way that saline does. And so it's like damned if you do, damned if you don't. Like each one has its problems. But I mean, if you're looking at it from a which is safer, if I were to go back in time, I think I probably would have gotten the saline. Just because I did have silicone stuck to my rib cage. So I was in a 9-hour procedure where I was under for 9 hours,
wow.
which is a very long time to be under anesthesia. And I was under for 9 hours, and they were scraping my ribs, and they were scraping. Yeah, they had to flip up my entire chest, like cut me open, flip up everything, wash me out with a sterilizer, and then work on scraping my ribs free of silicone. And it really, really hurt. Like I woke up with bruised ribs. Like it was no joke, but I'm glad that we got out, as much as we could. But I probably still have silicone in my body, so it's hard to say which is safer. But I think if I were to go back in time, I may have chosen to go with saline over the silicone.
Yeah. So through your social platform and like, through YouTube and Instagram and all of that, have you had a lot of people reaching out to you for advice or like, oh my God, like that's happening to me, and just kind of noticing the similarities?
Yeah, a ton of women. I've had so many women reach out, and I've become friends with a lot of them, which is really cool. And I've seen them heal, and then there's some who don't heal. And I think that was kind of the crowd that was really attracted to me because my story was very difficult. Like, I had implant illness, but I also had celiac disease, and I had like all these layered, like crazy things going on. And so for me, it was like my body didn't heal as soon as I got them out. And it was so discouraging because all these women were getting the procedure done where they had their implants taken out and they were 100% better. And here I was, like, they were hopping off the table, like bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, and I'm like barely scraping by. And I remember, after getting my procedure done, we were wheelchairing me to the car, and I'm like, I want Cheez-Its. Like, I was just like so out of it. And my poor fiance was like taking care of me. I was just a mess. And like, I think I peed on myself. Like, it was just bad. But anyways, like, we were on the way home. I was eating my Cheez-Its and just like puked all over myself. Like, and so like he was the MVP, he's really been there, and he's been such a great help. But like, it was layers of healing. After that I realized I'm not getting better. I got better in certain circumstances. Like I didn't have any of the tremors anymore. I wasn't having a lot of the weird symptoms I had, like the chemical smell was gone after about a month, after getting them out. And there's a lot of things, like my hair started growing back in, my inflammation went down a lot. I still had eye floaters until about June of this year. So, they did go away for a while. I was doing an all fruit diet, which is very weird. Like, people don't quite understand it. So I'll just say there was a guy I found on YouTube. His name is Dr. Robert Morse. And he's very extreme, very eccentric, like very interesting dude. But a lot of what he said made sense. And so I followed his protocol for about 9 months. And I will say I healed a ton on his protocol. Like, I was symptom free for a long time from doing his protocol. But the problem was the holidays came up, and I was working full time, and I started eating all the holiday food that clients were bringing in. And I kind of started to backslide, and then I got really sick. And that was like, I think my body was doing so good, and it's like, yeah, girl, like, you got this. Like, my inner body, like, whatever you want to call it, was like, yeah,
your inner
like,
monologue.
yeah, we're doing good. Like, we can keep going like this. And then all of a sudden I'm like, well, let me show you. And like, it was just like this whole thing where it was just like, it completely tanked my system. And it was bad. Like, there's no sugarcoating it. Like, people were like, oh, you were doing so good. And then all of a sudden they were seeing me like going through deep like struggles and dilemmas. And I think it was really disheartening to a lot of the people who followed me because they saw how much I healed. And then all of a sudden it was like, what the hell happened to Celia? Like she just like went off the rails and off the deep end. And I was really, really sick again. And I think it was really confusing for a lot of people. But you know, I always try and be honest on social media, and I'm like, hey, this is reality. It's not all, you know, rainbows and butterflies. I don't know everything, and I'm the first person to say that. I learned from everyone in my life, but I learned from people who know a lot more than me. And so, you know, when I was going through that, it was just a very humbling experience, but it was also a really good experience because people got to see like, hey, you know, life isn't perfect. And just because you healed up a lot, you can still get sick again if you do things that are, you know, not conducive to your healing. And so it really propelled me back into the fitness industry, though. I will say that. Like it really started my love again for mindset and for fitness and really overcoming things that, you know, that are hard.
So looking back on all of this and everything that you went through, would you say that plastic surgery was a huge mistake, or do you wish you would have done more research on finding a better doctor?
You know, this is like the really big question that I get asked a lot. And I don't think I would have gotten breast implants. Like knowing what I know now, I wish that I did a little bit more research, and I wish I took my time. I was very impatient back then. And I also just did things to please other people that I don't think I needed to do. And so if I were to go back in time, I think I would have taken my time with making decisions and been like, no, fucker, this is my money. Like, I'm paying you. You're not, you know, you're not the one who decides everything's best for me. Like, you know, and so I think I just let people kind of walk all over me back then. And I think that's how I got myself into that pickle. And so now I ask a lot of questions. Like if I'm going to go get something done, like who's to say? I don't want to ever say I would never do something, because who's to say I won't get lip injections or Botox, or, you know what I mean? I don't want to put that out there because it's just not true. Because like I may go do one of those things and I don't want to be sitting in the Botox office and someone's like, hey, weren't you on that podcast like a while ago talking about how like demonizing plastic surgery, and now here you are, like what are you doing? And so I think that anything you do the research, talk to your doctor. If your doctor pressures you to do anything, it's not a good doctor. And if the doctor is very transparent and like, hey, this is the labels inside the box, every single medical thing has a label to it. So you can read, you know, what are the potential side effects. But also knowing everybody's different. And, you know, I don't blame plastic surgery for all my dilemmas like a lot of the girls do. They're like, you know, implants ruined my life. And like to a certain extent, they cause a lot of pain. But I also probably had pre-existing conditions from not eating the way my body wanted me to eat. And, you know, so there's a lot that factors into it. So I never would like demonize anything, but I would say that, you know, I probably wouldn't have gotten implants knowing what I know now. I probably would have asked for a different solution. I would have maybe tried doing like breast enlargement pills. I know that sounds really weird, but there's herbal pills out there. One of the companies actually tried to sponsor me. I said, I'll try them out, but I still have been kind of scared to try them, to be honest, just because I'm not 100% with my health yet. But like, you know, my boobs are pretty big. I'm not going to lie. Like I have pretty big boobs. You guys can see like from the picture, but like, you know, I don't really need huge tits. It's not my life goal anymore. And so, I think like, honestly, I think more of that flat chestedness is kind of coming back in style anyways. Like, I think people are looking at reality as like a cool thing now, you know, like, celebrating how you were born versus trying to change it. And like I think the nose job industry, the plastic surgery industry just kind of got so artificial looking that people are kind of like, that's not really like the epitome of like beauty anymore. It's kind of like, just be yourself, enhance it with a little bit of mascara and some brow gel, because you know that we all have crazy brows sometimes, and like go on your way. And so I think like, you know, looking back at it, I would have asked myself, why am I doing this? And if it was to please other people and not myself, or if it was because I had some insecurity, I think I would have worked on that first prior to getting them done.
Totally. So, Celia, I want to say thank you so much for being on the podcast today, and as always, for keeping it real with us. How can everyone find you on
I'm
social
on
media?
YouTube. I don't remember my YouTube name, but if you type in Celia Cavalli, you'll be able to find me. I do have 2 accounts, so the one that you're going to want to find is the one that actually has followers, not the one that's for like random business stuff. So there's one that it actually looks like in a real account, so go to that one. And then I'm on Instagram. I'm not on Facebook because Facebook to me is just a shit show these days. So
Good for you.
Yeah, thank you. I actually told Mel to celebrate going off Facebook. I'm like, listen, it's the best feeling. You'll like pop a bottle of bubbly and celebrate because you're going to be dealing with a lot less chaos and bullshit in your life. And so I'm a huge advocate of Instagram. I love it. They just started doing the reels, which are awesome. It's kind of like a new TikTok feature. But anyways, I'll save you guys the details on that. You already know what I'm talking about. You're probably going to listen to this like back. You're going to be like, wait, reels are such an old thing. But anyways, my name is @LitandFaith. I've changed my name a couple times. It may stay the same, it may not, but I'm sure you'll be able to find me somehow. But yeah, it's Lit and Faith, and then I'm on YouTube, and that's it. And so I don't do Snapchat, I don't do anything else, but you can find me at those 2 places. I try to provide really great content that, tickles your fancy. And so I hope you enjoy it. Lots of fitness stuff. And so, yeah.
Yeah, she's great. We'll put the links down in the description. And again, thank you so much, Celia.
Thank you so much for having me. I really enjoyed it. Bye.
Bye. Well, thanks guys for tuning in to this week's episode of the Not Too Popular podcast. If you have a not too popular opinion on this episode or an episode topic, slide into our DMs on Instagram or Twitter, and be sure to follow or subscribe to this podcast for new episodes every Thursday.